In this topic, we are looking at our dynamic routing protocols and authentication. Whenever we are using a dynamic routing protocol like OSPF or EIGRP internally, of course, we can use authentication. And generally on iOS, we can support either clear text, MD5, or SHA. And of course, we generally want to use something more secure, sending that password as a hash like an MD5 or a SHA hash. Also, we do have the ability to support lots of different types of authentication on our ASAs as well. We'll take a look at some of those. And we'll also discuss where we might implement these passwords and, of course, how often we should be changing them. So, first of all, why do we have them? Well, anytime we are peering, where we set up, let's say, an OSPF or an EIGRP neighborship, we trust that router to send us updates. So, hey, here's a new prefix that I know about, and in addition, here are the parameters that come along with it. So what is the cost and what is the next hop IP, all that good stuff. So what security does is it helps to prevent our neighbors from spoofing this information. And even if we just have devices that might be connected to, let's say, a DMZ or a server, if a server gets compromised, could somebody spoof these messages? Of course they can. They can mimic or they can act like they're a router. The only downfall is it doesn't actually prevent any malicious updates. It just prevents any sort of false updates or prefix. Often they say, sure, we can support clear text, but we should be using things like a hash. So we just touched on some iOS enabled authentication. Pretty much everything supported on iOS. As far as the ASA, SHA is not supported yet, and other than that, we can see ASA is pretty much supported. And then, of course, we can see where firepower fits in here as well. And some other things that we should remember is these should always be used with an untrusted network. Most of the time, if we're doing BGP, we are working with our service providers on how our authentication should be set up with regards to BGP. So anything that is coming from outside of our environment or that's untrusted should always use some type of hashing. So we see some examples of some of the different types of hashing. Also, because these are going to be a little bit unlikely to be changed regularly, there are time-based keychains that you can set up. So if you want to change these every 3 months or 6 months, you can automatically have that provisioned in your keychain. So you have a time-based keychain that can do that, although you don't need to know the config for it in this class. As far as working along with something like a time-based key or something that changes every 3 months or every 6 months, we should also ensure that we're using very long passwords or very strong passwords, and we generally don't want to use the same password everywhere. So if we have a password in OSPF area 0 and then a different password in OSPF area 1, we can do things like that. Obviously a different password on BGP than our IGPs, and we can also support key rollover. So in addition, we can also implement some filtering. Filtering helps us to prevent against any route poisoning and or prevents against any potential obviously we want to allow the known good routing, but we want to reject any known bad routing. I don't know why I almost said that backwards. It was like I was thinking it one way in my head and reading it differently. And then we have this ability to do this, of course, but the configuration is outside of the scope of this class. So Here are just some examples of where we might implement filtering. There's prefix maps and route maps and all different types of filtering, but it allows us to specifically say, hey, maybe if we're doing, IGPs into other IGPs and redistribution, we can filter certain types of prefixes in and out of that environment. And if we're doing any type of BGP or border routing, we can certainly do lots of filtering there. Generally, our service providers are doing some filtering as well. But any additional layers of filtering you can implement, of course, is going to be beneficial. And here are some examples. Distribute lists are going to be leveraged anytime we're redistributing one protocol or static routes into another. We can implement area border router filtering when we have those routers that are participating in multiple areas. BGP is generally a given with regards to filtering, and then we can also do a variety of distribute lists with EIGRP as well.